But first up, we're heading right across to China, to Qindao, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is interacting with the people who've gathered there for the SCO Summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. Remember, India is participating in the summit this time around as a full-fledged member, as is Pakistan, also another country that's been included as a full member, something that the Russian President Vladimir Putin referred to it as an incident that made the SCO a summit of a global stature. So here we have visuals on our screens from live from Qingdao, where Prime Minister Modi is interacting with people who've gathered there, young kids and older people alike, around to see Prime Minister Modi. Now, the Prime Minister arrived in China earlier today. He has a meeting with President Xi Jinping lined up later in the day. Remember, this is going to be the second meeting between the two leaders of the two Asian giants, the second meeting in a matter of 6 weeks and their 11th meeting overall. The last time these two men met was back in Wuhan in China for an informal summit. For a resetting of ties is how a number of political pundits describe that meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi, So a lot of focus today on Prime Minister Modi. Remember, he's going to be one of the lone rangers, so to speak, one of the few, or actually the only one who is going to voice concern over the Belt and Road Initiative. All other members of the SCO are on board as far as China's flagship economic program goes. However, India has raised concern about the initiative time and again, especially about CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So it'll be interesting to note how exactly Mr. Modi plans on tackling the issue of the BRI at the SCO summit. It is likely to come up. Remember, only recently the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, has endorsed the BRI, much to India's disappointment. So interesting conversations definitely lined up for the Indian Prime Minister as things proceed at the SCO summit. Now, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a grouping. We are, of course, looking at two important summits that are taking place simultaneously in the world right now. One in the West, that is the G7, which is being described by many as the G6+1, thanks to President Trump taking an opposed view to other members of the G7 grouping. And on the other hand, there is, of course, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, which involves countries like Russia, India and China, of course, and Pakistan. Let's go across to Gaurav Sharma, WION's correspondent, joining us from Beijing in China. Gaurav, good afternoon. Thanks for joining in on the conversation. This is an important summit, definitely. There is this whole question of a divided West as being represented at the G7 as opposed to a resurgent Asia, with India and Pakistan now permanent members of the SCO.
Yeah, if you see the grouping has emerged as a very, very important bloc. Now it has eight members. And it started as a regional security group, and now it's also being talked about as a major economic and a political group also. And as I was saying earlier, that is also on the international radar, and it's also being talked about as a counterbalance, Eurasian counterbalance to NATO. So you can imagine, and it's happening on the same day when the G7 the group meeting is also taking place, and it has the grouping has two fastest growing economies like China and India, and you cannot ignore Russia also, because Russia over the years, despite its economic problem and sanctions by the US on certain issues, it's been doing very well. And you have to see the proximity between Russia and China over the past over 1 year. And again, if you take into account these 6 months, how China and India have come close, So it can also, I think it would be fair to say that it has come as a group which has a potential.
Absolutely. So a counterbalance to NATO, a counterbalance to Western groupings. It's interesting you bring up Russia, since President Trump has referred to wanting it back into the G7. That's an interesting comment. One conversation we'll reserve for later. But coming back to India and China, Gaurav, you did mention the fact that there has been a reset of ties in the last 6 months. Wuhan happened shorter, 6 weeks ago. What is the key focus you think that's going to emerge from the meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi today?
See, it's indeed an important meeting, but if you compare it with Wuhan, the meeting in Qindao will be largely symbolic, because this is a multilateral forum, and Xi Jinping will also have to accord a lot of time to other leaders. However, you cannot deny the significance of this meeting, because both the leaders will take stock of the meeting, of the Wuhan, of the development which have taken post Wuhan summit. And you know how it was an ice-breaking summit between both the leaders. So they will be talking, they will be discussing, okay, now what is the progress about it? I know these are the very, very, they discuss really big issues, but now they will be discussing. And if you see 2 months, I think 2 weeks ago, there was experts and people from sugar industry in India.
Mm-hmm.
They said that they intend to export 1.5 million tons of sugar to China. And one of the traders told a select few Indian journalists that export of sugar was something which was discussed between which was mentioned by Narendra Modi to Xi Jinping in Wuhan. So you have to see, and then the leaders were there after three weeks of the Wuhan summit.
Right.
So you can see that things have started working out. And if you see 2 weeks ago, India launched its second IT corridor in the city of Guiyang. So India is also eyeing its a hardware industry, hardware sector in China.
Absolutely.
And another thing, the pharmaceutical industry. But China has decided to, junk duty on major pharmaceutical products.
Right, so it's going to show how the relationship is going beyond just, let's say, lip service, and there's actual stuff that's happening on the ground. Gaurav, thank you for bringing us that perspective. We'll, of course, come back to you as the day proceeds, as more developments take place at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit.